Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport. This weekend we have the Macau Grand Prix Festival and a whole heap of action on one of the most difficult street circuits in the world. To celebrate, I am going to look at every Macau Grand Prix winner since it became a single-seater race, who they were and what happened to them. The first Macau Grand Prix were actually sports car races run from 1954 to 1961, before in 1962 it became a single-seater race for all time. In part 1 we are going to look at every Macau Grand Prix winner from 1962 to 1982, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss parts 2 and 3. And with that, let's jump into the video. 1962 and 1963, Arsenio Laurel. The first single-seater winner and first ever double winner was Arsenio Laurel of the Philippines, the son of the previous president of Japanese-occupied Philippines in World War II. He won in a little Lotus 22 in both 1962 and 1963, but would sadly be killed in the 1965 running of the event, apparently losing control and hitting the seawall to avoid hitting spectators. He died a hero and left a historic legacy in the Macau Grand Prix. 1964, Albert Poon. Albert Poon Bing Lit of British Hong Kong has raced at Macau more than any other person ever. However, he has won the Grand Prix race just once in a Lotus 23. He had a very successful career in Asia, but is mainly known for racing in consecutive Macau Grand Prix from 1961 to 1982 and in the Macau Guia race up to 1996. He is still alive and does not have the reputation of a poon hound. 1965, 1972, 1973 and 1975, John McDonald. The only 4-time winner of the Macau Grand Prix has also won the Motorbike Grand Prix and the Guia race, thereby claiming the crown of the King of Macau. Outside of that though, John McDonald did not accomplish much outside of Asia, but in Asia he also won the Malaysian Grand Prix 4 times, Prix F1 days, and the Indonesian Grand Prix. 1966, Mauro Bianchi. The grandfather of deceased Formula 1 driver Jules Bianchi, Mauro Bianchi was a keen racer, winning the 500 km Nürburgring with his brother Lucien, and winning the Macau Grand Prix in an Alpine T66. This race took the Grand Prix into the big leagues, as major entries started turning their attention to the race after the Alpine victory. If only they could do that in Formula 1. 1967, Tony Moore. The only Malaysian winner of the Macau Grand Prix, Tony Moore won in a Lotus 20. He never left Asia and would peak by racing in the Australian Formula 2 Championship. 1968 and 1971, Jan Bussell. As far as I can find, the only 2 races Jan Bussell ever won were the 2 Macau Grand Prix, winning 1968 in a Brabham BT23 and 1971 in a McLaren M4C. He raced around Asia but never really made a name for himself beyond Macau. 1969, Kevin Bartlett. Kevin Bartlett won in something called a Mildred Waggot, a car often seen in Australian Formula 2. Bartlett was a great Australian race driver, winning the Australian Drivers' Championship and the Bathurst 1000 in 1974, along with his success at Macau. He was a regular in Australian touring cars until 1990. 1970, Dieter Quester. Career BMW driver Dieter Quester won the 1970 Macau Grand Prix in a Formula 2 BMW F270. Dieter Quester was the first Macau winner to also race in Formula 1, with his single appearance for Surtees in 1974. He has had a very long relationship with BMW that has seen success in touring cars and sports cars. He also took the BMW F270 to victory at Hockenheim in the Euro F2 Championship in 1970, the first truly successful Macau Grand Prix winner. 1974 and 1976, Vern Schuppan. The Australian took 2 wins at Macau for Theodore Racing. He also raced in Formula 1 around the same time with Ensign, Surtees and Embassy Hill. He also won Le Mans in 1983, a podium at the Indy 500, and was a major factor in the Australian Grand Prix originally being held in Adelaide. He later managed the career of a young Scott Dixon, and is a very fondly remembered Aussie racing star. 1977 and 1978, Riccardo Patrese. Patrese was already a Formula 1 driver with Shadow when he won at Macau, taking 2 wins in a Chevron in 1977 and 1978. He would later go on to have one of the longest Formula 1 careers ever, racing for Arrows, Brabham, Williams and Benetton. His victories at Macau followed his championship win in the European Formula 3 Series in 1976, in what was one of the most exciting junior careers of anyone at the time. His 6 Formula 1 wins go some way to show his true potential. 1979 and 1980, Jeff Lees. Another driver who made his debut in Formula 1 first was Jeff Lees, who had a single appearance with Tyrrell in 1979. He won the 1979 and 1980 Macau Grand Prix in Theodore Racing Rolts, before making sporadic appearances in Formula 1 with Shadow, Ensign, Ram, Lotus and of course Theodore Racing. He also made 14 attempts at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, including a long association with Tom's Toyota, but never finished higher than 6th. His career peaked with the Macau Grand Prix and the 1981 European F2 title. 1981 Bob Earl. American Bob Earl is the only American Macau Grand Prix winner in a Hayashi 220p Toyota in 1981. This would be the only real success of his motor racing career, but he has won races in IMSA and finished for 24 Hours of Le Mans in 17th. He's now an environmentalist apparently. 1982 Roberto Moreno. Our final driver for today is the much loved and underrated Brazilian Roberto Moreno, who also won for Theodore Racing. He never raced for Theodore Racing in Formula 1, but he did race for every other backmarker Formula 1 team. He did race for Lotus in Formula 1 prior to the Macau Grand Prix, but failed to qualify and would have to wait 5 years to return, winning the International F3000 Championship in 1988. After F1 he would take wins in the kart series and would retire from racing in the early 2000s. 1983 Ayrton Senna. Little known Brazilian Ayrton Senna won both legs of the 1983 Macau Grand Prix. Racing for current BMW BTCC team West Surrey Racing, he beat Roberto Guerrero and Gerhard Berger to take a glorious win at Macau. He also won the British Formula 3 title that same year and would launch into one of the greatest Formula 1 careers of anyone ever, racing for Tolman, Lotus, McLaren and Williams. But you've probably heard this story before. 1984 John Nielsen. The Dane is more known for his sports car success but began his career in single-seaters, winning at Macau in 1984 ahead of Stefan Johansson and Mike Fackwell. The former Renault F1 test driver would race in the inaugural International F3000 series, but pivoted into sports cars, where he won the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1990 alongside Martin Brundle and Price Cobb, and later the BPR Global Series and Japan Grand Touring Championship in the mid-90s. 1985 Maurizio Gugelmin. Very much followed in the footsteps of fellow Brazilian Ayrton Senna, but things did not work out quite so well for Gugelmin. He won the British Formula 3 Championship and the Macau Grand Prix in the same year. An interesting Macau Grand Prix with Formula 1 race winner René Arnoux in the field. Gugelmin's career didn't match Senna's thereafter, had a half-decent season in International F3000, followed by a few years in Formula 1 with Leighton House and Jordan, then took a single win in the kart series. 1986 Andy Wallace. Another driver more known for sports car success, Andy Wallace won at Macau in 1986 and went on to win every major sports car race going, winning Le Mans with Jaguar in 1988, followed by several races at Daytona and Sebring, as well as the Petit Le Mans. In the modern day, he took a Bugatti Chiron to a record 300 miles per hour. Understated career, but very good. 1987 Martin Donnelly. If there was a driver who never lived up to the promise, it was Martin Donnelly. Finishing 3rd overall in the British F3 twice, he won the Macau Grand Prix, took wins in the International F3000. He then went on to start one race for Arrows in 1989 and most of a season with Lotus in 1990. He had a huge crash at Jerez that effectively ended his career. He's made his comeback here and there, including for BTCC, but never lived up to that Macau Grand Prix win. 1988 Enrico Petaggia. The former Italian Formula 3 champion somehow beat Damon Hill at Macau in 1988. He would then do nothing in International F3000, signed for Coloni in Formula 1, never qualified for a race, joined Andrea Moda before departing before even getting close to trying to qualify for a race. He'd turn up here and there like a few drivers in the Super Tourenwagen Cup, but otherwise, not much. 1989 David Brabham. Survived rather than won might be the right word for this Macau victory. Only 10 cars finished the race. Not even Michael Schumacher or Mika Hakkinen made it to the end. We went over this recently, but disappointment in Formula 1 with Brabham and Syntec, success in touring cars and sports cars, started car business. 1990 Michael Schumacher. The German legend came back a year later and won at Macau, beating future teammates Mika Salo and Eddie Irvine. He went on to win 7 Formula 1 titles. You don't need to hear it from me, but his early career was interesting, winning sports car races for Sauber, failing to score points in DTM, winning the German Formula 3 title. It does not prepare you for the absolute domination of Formula 1 he would go on to have. 1991 David Coulthard. Chins won Macau in 1991, and to be honest, it was one of the few things he would win in his career. 2nd in British F3 in 1991, 3rd in International F3000 in 1993, Formula 1 with Williams, McLaren and Red Bull, taking 12 wins but finishing 3rd overall 4 times and runner-up once in 2001. Then a few years of DTM before retirement. He's a pundit nowadays and he annoys me so much. 1992 Rickard Rydell. I haven't talked about Swedish driver Rickard Rydell all that much on this channel, but when I was a kid I was obsessed with him. Poster over the bed and all. Don't know why. I met him once, I guess. I was like 7 or 8. I was too scared to speak to him. Single-seaters didn't work out for Rydell, and within a couple of years he joined Volvo in the BTCC, winning the title in 1998. He'd be a regular in the World Touring Cars until he retired after 2016. 1993, Georg Müller. I don't know how Georg Müller never made it to Formula 1. He has the right CV for it. Macau Grand Prix in 1993, German Formula 3 champion in 1994, International F3000 in 1996. You'd think a Minardi or an Arrows would love a Georg Müller on board after that. Well, he was a test driver for Arrows and Sauber, but was the only F3000 champion at the time to never make it to Formula 1. But he would have a successful career in sports cars and touring cars, especially with BMW. 1994, Sascha Maassen. I think competent but not flashy is the best way to describe Sascha Maassen. He won Macau ahead of such racing luminaries as Kelvin Burt and Jan Magnussen, and would pivot into touring cars and sports cars in the years after, never finding much success outside of a class win in the American Le Mans Series. 1995, Ralf Schumacher. The second Schumacher on this list, just 5 years after his brother Michael. He lost the German Formula 3 title race to Norberto Fontana, and went to Japan in 1996 winning the Formula Nippon title. He had a semi-successful time in Formula 1 with Jordan, Williams and Toyota, taking 6 wins, and he'd retire after a few years in the DTM, taking a single win. 1996, Ralph Furman. Irishman Ralph Furman won the Macau Grand Prix in 1996, same year he won the British Formula 3 title. After this, his career seemed to come to a stop for a few years, racing in Japan, taking 7 wins in Formula Nippon, before finally taking the title at the 6th attempt in 2002. He got a brief go in Formula 1 with Jordan, scoring 1 point, before fleeing back to Japan in the Super GT series, winning it in 2007 alongside Daisuke Ito. 1997, Sahil Ayari. The Frenchman was eventually successful with sports car racing, but his single-seater career was a bit of a slog. He won 2 international F3000 races, but never finished higher than 5th overall. He's won several French touring car championships and some sports car series. Now in his 50s, he races less and less. 1998, Peter Dumbreck. The 1998 Japanese F3 and Macau Grand Prix winner was Peter Dumbreck. He'd win some DTM and Super GT races here and there, finished 3rd in class at Le Mans and Aston in 2013. 1999, Darren Manning. Wow, there were some pretty mid-British drivers knocking around at this time. Darren Manning somehow beat Jenson Button to win Macau in 1999. Like Dumbreck, he also won in Japanese Formula 3 that same year. Like Dumbreck, he didn't do much after. A couple of really average years in F3000, several really average years in IndyCar, pretty much disappeared by the time Jenson Button won the F1 title. 2000, Andre Couto. The first home driver to win the Macau Grand Prix, it was a bit of a fluke due to weather, but Couto survived when people like Takuma Sato and Irene Kartikeyan did not. But he was a good driver with a few years of international F3000 behind him. He'd be a regular in Super GT for the next 2 decades, winning the secondary GT300 crown in 2015. 2001, Takuma Sato. The popular Japanese driver took the Macau win at the 2nd attempt, beating future fellow F1 drivers Yuji Ida, Anthony Davidson, Heikki Kovalainen, Tiago Montero and Sakon Yamamoto. Sato would move on to Formula 1 with Jordan, BAR and Super Aguri, before heading to IndyCar and winning the Indy 500 twice. 2002, Tristan Gamendi. Frenchman Tristan Gamendi was the winner in a pretty weak year for Macau, beating Heikki Kovalainen and 2010 Super GT champion Takashi Kaguri. His single-seater career never went beyond GP2, and whilst he took a podium at Le Mans, he was hardly a sports car superstar. Average career that ended with runs in European Le Mans and random GT races. 2003, Nicolas Lapierre. This was Nicolas Lapierre's first ever race win, having spent a few years in French Formula Renault with very limited success. His junior Formula career was very up and down. 3rd in European Formula 3 in 2004, A1 GP winner in 2006, and he got to race in GP2 with Arden and Dams, before switching to endurance racing and finding his true path. A couple of podiums at Le Mans and 4 class wins, a 2-time LMP2 World Endurance Champion, and now going to be a hypercar driver for Alpine. He's done pretty good. 2004, Alexandre Premat. Very similar career to Nicolas Lapierre, but not as successful. He won the 2004 Macau Grand Prix, beating Robert Kubica and Lewis Hamilton, after the latter crashed into Nico Rosberg, in what would start a pattern for the next decade and a bit. Premat won the A1 GP title with Nicolas Lapierre in 2006 and was a good runner in GP2 with ART, taking 3 wins and finishing 3rd in the championship in 2006. He did a Formula 1 test for Spiker and has since raced in DTM and endurance racing to very limited success. But he has won for Bathurst 1000. He may not be an outright race winner, but he can be considered a very capable hand for any middling GT team needing a driver. 2005, Lucas di Grassi. Future star of Formula E, Lucas di Grassi beat Robert Kubica and Sebastian Vettel to win at Macau and had a single season of Formula 1 with Virgin. He went on to be a big part of Formula E existing and has been a champion in the series with Abt Audi and has slipped down the field with the likes of Venturi and Mahindra, but returns to the Abt team for 2024 and will be hoping this reunion will launch him back to the top of Formula E. 2006, Mike Conway. Adrian Sutil, Sebastian Buemi, Romain Grosjean all finished behind Mike Conway at Macau, but his biggest threat was two-time Lamborghini North America champion Richard Antonucci. Conway would race in Formula E, but only very briefly, before taking 4 wins in IndyCar and having a successful endurance career with Toyota, winning Le Mans, 2 World Endurance titles, and as of the end of 2023, he has taken 17 wins in total. 2007, Oliver Jarvis. Won against a pretty weak field at Macau in 2007, Oliver Jarvis has raced in almost everything. He would soon after race in DTM for a few years, has taken 4 podiums at Le Mans, won the title in the IMSA as well as the 24 Hours of Daytona, still a major player in the world of endurance racing. 2008, Kaisuke Kunamoto. Despite beating Eduardo Mortara and Brendan Hartley, Kaisuke Kunamoto's career would be over just a couple of years after his Macau win. He'd made an appearance at Le Mans and had a few races in Super GT, but by 2010 he was finished after an average season in Formula Renault 3.5. Even worse, his younger brother Yuji is a Super Formula champion, making family gatherings very awkward. 2009 and 2010, Eduardo Mortara. The first 2-time winner since Jeff Lees 30 years previously, Mortara beat such future stars as Valtteri Bottas, Jules Bianchi and Marcus Ericsson to win at Macau twice. He's also won like 5 Macau GT races, so he knows the streets pretty well. Mortara would win for Formula 3 Euro Series in 2010, but never got picked up for Formula 1, moving over to DTM for a number of years, taking 10 wins and finishing runner-up in 2016, and has also had a long run with Venturi in Formula E, winning 6 races and finishing runner-up in 2021, one of the all-time best at Macau. 2011, Daniel Juncadella. Spaniard Daniel Juncadella really came to age in 2011. He raced in GP3 in 2010 with Tech 1 Racing and was pretty anonymous. In 2011 he was 3rd in Formula 3 Euro Series and won the Macau Grand Prix, and in 2012 he won the Formula 3 Euro Series, European Formula 3 Series and the Masters of Formula 3 race, but he would only get a couple of Formula 1 test drives, moved into DTM for a few years, took a single win and is now a very competent GT driver. 2012 and 2016, Antonio Felix da Costa. The Formula E champion beat a slew of Formula E drivers and George Russell to win 2 Macau Grand Prix in the former Portuguese colony. He's raced in all but 4 Formula E races ever, taking 8 wins and the 2020 championship with Techeetah. He's won the LMP2 title in the World Endurance Championship and continues to race for Porsche in Formula E. 2013, Alex Lynn. Beat previous year's winner Antonio Felix da Costa at Macau and went on to be a GP3 champion in 2014. He was a development driver for Williams for a couple of years and took wins in GP2. He'd go on to race in Formula E, taking a single win for Mahindra, and is now an endurance racer, getting a podium at this year's Le Mans with Cadillac. 2014 and 2015, Felix Rosenqvist. Won 2 very mixed strength fields of the Macau Grand Prix, beating Lucas Aura to the crown in 2014 and Charles Leclerc in 2015. One has failed to win the DTM title in the last couple of years and the other has failed to win the F1 crown. Rosenqvist did neither. After winning the Formula 3 Euro Series in 2015, he'd spent a few years in Formula E before heading to America to race in IndyCar, taking a win but never really being a championship contender. 2017 and 2018, Dan Ticktum. I thought Dan Ticktum was definitely going to be a Formula 1 driver at some point, but those days have since passed. Despite beating Lando Norris to win at Macau in 2017 and Joel Eriksson in 2018, Ticktum never got to race in Formula 1 despite being a Williams reserve driver. He took wins in Formula 2 but has since moved on to Formula E with Neo, where he's been down the back of the field and remains at the newly rebranded ERT team for 2024. 2019, Richard Verschoor. The final winner pre-COVID was Dutchman Richard Verschoor, beating the now disgraced Yuri Vips. He has been pretty mediocre in both Formula 3 and Formula 2, but has at least won races in the latter, taking 3 wins in 3 years for MP, Trident and Van Amersfoort. Don't know where he'll be in 2024, but surely his time is almost up in Formula 2. 2020 and 2021, Hon Chao Long. With the international crowd absent for a few years, it was time for the locals to shine. The first Formula 4 Macau Grand Prix, and the second as well, was won by Hon Chao Long. He's a Chinese F4 champion, got a few races in Formula 3 back in 2019, and has since raced in the Chinese GT Championship. 2022, Wing Chung Chang. The only other winner during the dark years was Wing Chung Chang. He had finished second in the previous 2 years, so definitely deserved to take this win. He's a Formula 4 China champion, and I have no idea what he did in 2023. 2023, Luke Browning. And the reason I delayed this video, Luke Browning won the 2023 race, and I am happy to include the latest winner on this list. I did not call Luke Browning winning at Macau. What a shock. The first winner for High Tech, the former British F4 and GP3 champion, had a pretty average year in Formula 3, but will hopefully take this Macau win and have an improved 2024. So they are all the winners of the Macau Grand Prix, from the very first single-seater race winner won by Arsenio Loel to the very latest with Luke Browning. Make sure you check out all the Macau videos, which will continue to come for the next week. Leave your thoughts down below, subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching, and have a good one.